to the Get Your Shift Together Men's Podcast with your host, Dr. MyRon Edmonds.
What's good? What's good? What's good?
Yo, we back. Hello. Get Your Shift Together podcast. How you feeling, MyRon?
I'm feeling amazing. Let's go. I'm ready for this subject today. Talking about men and the church, the love-hate relationship. Why they ain't in church? It's a part of a 3-part series, so it's going to be great.
Yeah, but the question is church just for women? Is it just made for women? Is that the reason why brothers aren't in church? That's the question we're going to be wrestling with today, probably next week, probably the week after. So brothers, if you're on here, this conversation is for you. We got to always give our disclaimer. This is a men's podcast. So sisters, this is like coming to the barbershop. If you're here, but this is the conversation that men need to have, so you have an opportunity to overhear it. But brothers, this is for you. Make sure you come on in, share what you got. And for those of you who are coming on, make sure that you share this podcast. If you're listening to this, make sure you give us a rating and a review. And, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the channel, so that when we release new episodes every week, you'll get them.
All right, what we got today, man? We got a great sponsor who always is looking out for building relationships with men, but they have enlarged their footprint. But we got to give love today to the brothers and sisters golf tournament. Tell them a little bit about it, Kymone.
Absolutely. It's taking place in Walt Disney World Resort, Orlando, Florida, October 9 to 13, 2022. If you want to sign up for this, make sure you go to brothersgolf.org, brothersgolf.org. And listen, because we here at the Get Your Shift Together Men's Podcast, we want to encourage men to have community. We've worked out a special deal with them that if you put in the coupon code SHIFT, you will get a discount. You get a special discount from them. And listen, if you're into golf, go down there and enjoy the fellowship. If you're not into golf, go down there, enjoy the fellowship, get to learn the game. And listen, you make a lot of good connections playing golf. That's what I've heard. Like a lot of business deals are closed on the golf course. So brothersgolf.org, brothers going over there, use the coupon code SHIFT.
That's why dudes ain't at church, man. They
on the golf course.
That's what my uncle calls it. He calls it St. Green. He calls it the St. Green Church, man. They all at the golf course. And they talk about, man, how you just experience God in nature and fellowship. And you talk about the word from one hole to the other.
Unc might be onto something right there. I know I haven't tested it out. I probably got to test it before I knock it. But brothers, make sure you go over there, brothersgolf.org. One more thing before we get to a couple of things we want to get to. Are you a high integrity man? A high integrity man, right? If I asked you, brothers, that a lot of you probably say, yeah, of course I am. And the next question I'd ask you is, how do you know, right? So we've put together an assessment. And this assessment is really important because we talk about winning in the things that matter. How do you know if you're winning in the things that matter? Well, we have an assessment tool we put together. It's free. It takes you about 3 minutes to find out, here are the areas that I'm strong in. And here are the areas that I need to do a little bit of work. I need probably some resources and community to come alongside me. So if you go to IamAHighIntegrityMan.com, just go on there and take that 3-minute assessment, and it will help you to be able to figure out what are the areas you need to grow in.
Yeah, it's a good mirror.
Yeah.
Help you get a chance to check yourself out. Well, anyway,
one more thing. Speaking about growth.
Yeah.
You have an opportunity for men to grow starting next week, MyRon. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, man. You just took the words out of my mouth. I'm like so geeked and fired up about this mid-year men's week of prayer. We start off the beginning of the year with a week of prayer. And so we're going to go and hit that reset button. I don't know about you. I mean, just real talk, man.
Yeah.
Everybody falls off in some respect, man. It's just, and especially, when you're trying to be this man that wins in every area that matters the most. That's dude. I mean, you talking about spiritual life, your health, your wellness, your integrity, your family, all that stuff. One of the things I've struggled with is balance, like balancing all these priorities. And so sometimes we need to hit the reset button. That's what this week of prayer is, fellas. Do me a favor. You don't got to register. You don't got to do nothing. All you got to do is show up this coming Monday at 7 a.m. We're going to be getting in the word. We're going to be having some interactive conversations, really just about what it means to be a man of God. And really, it's just really a call to come back to, who we were created to be. So, yeah, man, I'm excited about that. It's going to be at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. As I said, right. 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're just going to be for 1 hour, guys, in and out. Come through as you're on your commute. If you're still at home, if you having devotion, have devotion with us. It's going to be an amazing time. Let me put that flyer on the screen so you guys can see the info there. Everything's going to be all on my social media outlets, my YouTube page, Facebook page. I'm going to slide Instagram in there. Got a little something to set that up with too. So come on, fellas. Let's make it happen. How to be a man of God, virtual week of prayer.
I'm pretty excited about that. There's something when you're speaking to men. I think brothers kind of resonate with that. It kind of pulls them in.
Well, there's a freedom that I also have when I speak to men that I look forward to. I just, seriously, I just come alive. I actually really just thank you, man, for steering me back into my calling and my assignment. It's just something about being with brothers, man. Especially
That's true.
With the Lord.
All right. So there's a lot going on in the sports world. Is our man here today? Here we go. Hey.
What's going on, gentlemen?
What's going on, Lance? Here, bro.
Always a pleasure, man.
Yes, sir. Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you.
Lance J is in the house.
I'm in the house, in the building. So I'm very excited about the topic that you're covering today. So I'm not gonna yap as long as I usually do. But I had two things that I really want.
Are you going to stay on with us? I mean, I asked. Okay, good. That's great. It's
an honor to be a part of that conversation, and I think it's a very mature dialogue that, instead of the frivolous chicanery that you frequently attach yourself to. So I was very proud and very honored that you asked me to be a part of that conversation. I've been pivoting on my show and really talking a lot about leadership, and one of the great things about sports is that you have good run franchises, you have bad run franchises. So leadership is always at the top. We know that the Dallas Cowboys are going to go 10-7 this year. Dak Prescott's going to throw 4 picks in the last game, and they're going to miss the playoffs. Jerry Jones is the common denominator in all of those issues. When Jerry Jones took the ball from Jimmy Johnson, he said that my ego is more important than winning championships. So leadership is very, very important in building organizations. You gentlemen have your own entrepreneurs. MyRon, I know that you're a pastor. Kymone, you've been an administrator. DJ Walk has his own business. You have to have strong leadership. And I think one of the topics that I've seen recently is kind of this saga with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. People like to go after them personally. They're soft. Kevin Durant has a burner account. Kyrie Irving thinks that the world is flat. I stay away from that because we don't know these people. And sometimes we get it twisted and think if you rolled up on KD at an airport, you would get disemboweled by his bodyguards. Like you don't know these guys, and I'm not going to rip them personally. But I'm going to say that they're unprofessional. You guys are pastors. How many times, be silent. How many times have you worked with people who are awesome talents, could preach the brakes off of anyone, could baptize 300 people in one day, but they were divas. They didn't do the little things. They were difficult to work with. They didn't want to participate in any team-based stuff. They thought that they were an island. And I think what we've seen in the trade market for KD and for Kyrie, KD is arguably the second best player in the NBA. Kyrie is arguably one of the best ball handlers ever in the NBA and a phenomenal player, phenomenal talent. Nobody wants these guys. The Nets can't trade these guys. The Lakers said, we'll give you Russell Westbrook, who's washed, and, Kentarius Pope, we'll give you a bunch of trash in an expiring contract. I thought that the Suns would be all over KD. I thought that the Heat would be all over KD. But what you're seeing is these guys have not established themselves as leaders. They're phenomenal players. But if you're going to pay someone top dollar, they have to possess additional leadership qualities. You can't pay someone and build your franchise around a number 2 leader. And I just find that fascinating that no one questions Kyrie's talent when he's on the court. No one questions KD's talent, but it's their leadership. It's the fact that they don't do the small thing. It's the fact that they don't galvanize. It's the fact that they're to themselves. And I think it's come back to bite them, and it's going to have a deleterious effect on their careers. And I wanted to bring that up. I was curious about your thoughts because, I've been chatting with you guys, been chatting with Walk really about leadership and how to build. You guys are leaders. You guys are builders. You guys are church planners. You guys have poured into people. How do those fundamentals transition to sports? And can you be elite, the best of the best, GOAT material, like MyRon says, greatest of era time, not, the GOTE. Can you beat that if you're not a leader? Can you just show up and be like Lou Williams and get buckets and then go to the strip club afterwards? Or do you have to be a leader to be great? Steph Curry.
No,
we see that with Giannis. Those guys are leaders. Giannis gets better every year. There was a podcast where Andre Iguodala was talking about Rasheed Wallace would be one of the best players in the league. Rasheed Wallace has the talent to be. He could have been one of the best players in the NBA back then, but he was toting it up. He wasn't going to practice. He was never in shape. He was getting pulled over with weed and David Stoudemire. Like, can you really unlock your potential if you don't have that leadership skill?
Yes, of course you can.
Okay.
I'm going to answer his question. Listen, greatness to me has nothing to do with leadership. Greatness to me has to do with one's ability to be able to play to their full potential as a person. Everybody is not a leader, and sometimes the best players, we expect them to be leaders, but they're not all leaders. They may not have that leadership DNA. You and I, all of us on here, know people who are extremely gifted, but they just don't have, and they're good people, they just don't have a leadership quality. I'll give you a prime example of this. You look at the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat, with regularity, keep offering a contract to Udonis Haslem and have done so over the years. Udonis Haslem was never one of the best players on the Miami Heat, even when they were winning championships. You can't even say that he was a Draymond Green. He was a good hustle player, provided good defense, but he was an emotional leader. He is a leader. He is not the best player. He's a leader. And so I'm saying, I think
is he getting a max contract though? Is he making $45 million?
No, that's my point. My point is I think it's, and this goes for in life. So I'm saying we're using sports, but I'm saying in life, just because somebody is good at something doesn't mean that they should be expected to be good at leadership. Let leaders lead and let other people do what they do. We take disc assessments for this stuff. Some people are leaders. Some people are support people. It could be that Kevin Durant is just a support person who is really skilled in basketball who needs to be led. And that's why he needs to go to a team that has real leadership.
Well, I mean, I think the people have different styles of leadership as well. Like Steph's style of leadership is definitely different than Jordan's style of leadership. Doesn't make him any less of a leader, right? And I think people, if you are paid the most, if you are the franchise player, people expect a certain type of leadership. They don't expect you to be the rah-rah guy. You don't always have to be the one having everyone have fun, but you have to set an example. And that's really the biggest part of leadership. Is not the speeches, is the example. You got to show up. You got to be the one when people are like stressed out, like they're frustrated, you keep your head calm. And I think that's what we're looking for. Not just from these guys we're talking about, we're looking for from any leader. We don't really need the speeches, right? We don't need to be more motivated. We just need an example to follow when we get in a stressful situation.
Isn't Kevin Durant an example? I'm just saying from a basketball perspective. I'm saying we talk about, and honestly, back to James' point, I'm so glad you said this, dude. Because sometimes we be talking about stuff, and honestly, we get our stuff straight from the media, what we saw on First Take Sports. Right. And these guys have personal relationships with these people. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. So we don't really know who these people are. But I'm just saying, Kevin Durant, from just what we see on the basketball court, the guy gets better and better, even after injuries. Clearly, he's working on his game. Clearly, he's a book bag basketball guy. He may not be a speech giver. Somebody like Draymond Green might overpower him because Draymond Green is a leader, right? He's type A personality. Vocal. Yeah. I'd say Draymond Green is all of the above. I see him as a hard worker. I think Draymond Green's a leader. I think you put Draymond Green in any room, Draymond Green's going to be a leader. right? Just like you would, because you're a high D, right? So I'm just saying, like, dude, like let the man Kevin Durant, let him live, man. I don't know why people so hard on this man, because he asked for a trade. We want everybody to be Jordan. That's honestly, if you ask me, I think we want everybody to be Michael Jordan, and everybody is compared to Jordan and how they lead. But listen, the man is not punching people in the face. He's not punching people in the face. He's not hazing.
Jordan didn't have Instagram. He didn't have World Star. He didn't have paparazzi. I mean, it's hard. Yeah. I think one of the best things that you've said, talking about sports, it's really difficult to compare eras because technology is different, fans are different, stadiums are different. You know, I flew when I was I flew on the plane with the Utah Jazz once, you know, from Philly to Orlando from school one time. I mean, it's just I was walking right by Karl Malone. I mean, that would never happen now. I mean, it's just a completely different era. I mean, you got people on Instagram threatening to kill you because you missed a shot. But I think it's interesting in the trade market. So, you know, the kind of counter, I would just say that when you're the face of the franchise, there are expectations that are a little bit more. You know, if you're the CEO, there's something that's expected more. And I think that's why I brought it up. Can you just be a guy that gets buckets? You're getting 29 and change a game, but you don't participate in the other stuff. Can you still be a great leader or a great asset to a team? You're saying yes. I'm saying I agree to an extent, but the GMs and the fans, they may want more, and they have a right to want more. I mean, I was a season ticket holder to the Phoenix Suns. I saw them to lose a whole lot of games. I was a season ticket holder to the Phoenix Mercury as well, which segues me into my next topic before we move on. I've been really following Brittany Griner and the situation that's going on with her. I think that she's a political pawn. I hope that President Biden and the powers that be do whatever they can to get this sister home as soon as possible. That said, I have seen an undercurrent and it is an unpopular opinion, but I've seen an undercurrent on social media where there's no accountability if, in fact, the charges against her have some truth to it. And I think that in society, sometimes we hide behind, you know, our differences. We especially those that are in protected classes, especially those that are different. There is accountability. We all have to be accountable for our decisions. I own several guns. I carry a gun with me almost everywhere I go. When I'm going to the airport, I carry a gun in my duffel bag. I have to make sure that I don't bring that gun to the airport, even though it's the bag that I take with me every day. I'm sure that Brittany Griner didn't intentionally try to bring in vape products and cannabis oil. That would be stupid. Yeah. But when you make a mistake, there are consequences, and you have to know the room. All of us have been out the country. I've been to Europe. I lived in Korea for half a year. When I went to the DMZ and tried to take pictures up there, they were like, "Hey, you're not in America. If you take one more picture, we're confiscating this camera, and maybe you have to know." A good point. You have to understand. So I just think there's got to be accountability on her part. The regime in Russia, we can't trust them. We know that Putin's an awful person and they're in the midst of a war. But I don't want to go too much. I don't want to swing the pendulum too much in the other direction. There's never any accountability for our own mistakes. We got to have accountability too. Yeah, we'll definitely. There's the Brittany Griner story. First of all, we're praying for Brittany Griner, and we're praying that she's brought home safely and soon. And what you bring up here, we got to come back to it, because I think the topic of accountability and just balancing what we even know about the story is something we got to come back to. But you bring up something that we can segue now into our point, right? We talk about men and the expectations. We talked about the expectations we put on Kyrie and Kevin Durant. And our topic today is church for men. And probably for a lot of men, their expectations that this organization called church, this thing called church, we put on men. But a lot of men don't feel or fit in there. And we find the numbers that a lot of men aren't engaged. MyRon, what are the numbers that you pulled up that you were sharing?
Yeah, sadly, none of this stuff is, I shouldn't say sadly. The reality is none of this stuff has changed since I did research on this, well over 12 years ago when I was working on my dissertation on this very subject. And it's pretty much, especially in the Black church in America, and we're talking about America here, you're talking about numbers somewhere between 60 and 70% of most church congregants are women. And there've been a bunch of books, a bunch of people trying to figure out what's going on. Seems like it's getting worse post-pandemic. Yeah. And I'm anxious to get into this thing today because I have a vested interest in the spirituality of men, but I see a lot of men who are saying, I don't need to get my spiritual development and growth from the church. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I can get it someplace else. This is new. This is a total departure from what we were raised as kids and previous generations. And so there's a new spirituality that we're seeing rising amongst men, and a lot of it is without church.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is we're not just talking about it. So those who may be following this podcast, MyRon pastors a congregation. I pastor the congregation. So maybe you say, how can we even talk to this topic? And I think we do have some credibility because we talk with people. But we wanted to bring on someone who has a life experience where they're saying, I'm a man, I love God, but I'm not presently a part of a church. So MyRon, just kind of introduce our guest who we want to bring on now.
Yeah, I got my brother Brandon Gamble. We're always chit-chatting on social media together, and he's always got a good take. And I literally, because of the podcast, I'll snatch this guy up. So I'm going to bring him in now. I literally snatched this guy up and was like, hey, come on the podcast, man, yesterday. And he was willing to jump in this thing and get in here with us and talk about this thing. Hey, Brandon, man, talk to me, man. You got on our Facebook page and I asked the question. I said, I want to know, is there brothers out there that love the Lord, but they don't want to do church? Right. And you responded. Tell us, man, what's going on, man?
Well, I figured I'd break it down into 5 different reasons why I left the church, but it was kind of slowly over about 10 years, right? Okay. So the first thing, I was in a very strong men's ministry, and that kept me, but then it ended due to some changes at church, and I'll talk about that next one. But what I loved about that men's ministry, it was beyond prayer and food. I got prayer and food at home, right? But when the brothers came together, there were some fun things that we did. Everything from going camping together to fishing trips to shooting. But also, it was during those times where we really share and get more connected, right? The second thing that led me away, and again, these first 3 are kind of general to other men who I've talked about who are not going back to church. The pastor fell, but he never really changed or repented. Whether it was over, sexual infidelity, whether it was over finances, or just like he was just dead wrong about a decision that the board was moving towards. Because I was sitting on the board, but that pastor just said, no, I'm going to double down on it. And it just got worse, which disrupted the men's ministry because some people look to the pastor for leadership. And I was not raised that way to look to the pastor for leadership. So, but that was kind of the first 2 big things. The next is I read this book by Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, and then called Adam, Where Art Thou? Right? And Dr. Kunjufu, what I appreciate about him, he actually does the research. So he asked 100 men, similar to what you're doing now, but he asked them and got some direct answers. Now, at that time, I was like, oh, that's just other people. That's not me. But then I read this other book called Why Men Hate Going to Church by David Morrow. And that kind of opened my eyes to, man, every program here, or 90% of the programming here, is for my wife at the time and my kids, which is fine. But yeah, I'm not, I need a little bit more. There was a period where my family went to another church for my kids, really. And I was excited about that because they had a strong youth ministry, but that men's ministry was not there in the same way. Next, at least for me, and these last 2 are more personal, right? And I think maybe it happens to folks, but it's like issues kind of overtake you, right? Working for a church denomination that had a lack of action or support for a particular family member in distress, right? And I'm calling out, and the church is not really responding in a timely fashion for that family member, right? So the last part is COVID-19 and being at home and watching TV and watching services. I'm like, and there's a range, right? The range, right? It's almost like kind of has backwards effects. There's so many different options, right? I can still engage, but not have to leave the comfort of my own home for a minute, or engage at my own time and say, get involved with the local ministry. Or like an actual service ministry, right? That's either everything from feeding the homeless to mentorship to discussing social justice issues. But my divorce, church was a place to connect, and then we just kind of fell apart. And I began the divorce process during COVID. In church, going back is kind of painful. And in the denomination I'm in, there's it's tight circles. So I can go just about anywhere in North America. I'm going to know somebody who knew us. Like, I can do other things rather than cry after church. So I decided, like, I'm indefinitely away from church, but I'm going to spend my time on these last few things I'm going to share with you. Online ministries, right? I engage or I share my own. Civic and community service, so mentorship, social justice. I go surfing. I may travel over a long weekend. I may take out a date, right? Mandatory work events sometimes for my career. Those are kind of things that I engage in instead of, but I'll engage as I want to. So that's it.
Yo, Brandon, that's a lot. You shared that, man. You just downloaded a lot on us here that we got to unpack. Go ahead, Myron.
Yeah. Get in where you fit in.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I was just looking at the Facebook page, and as I was looking at the Facebook page, and I listened to Brandon's comments, like I don't hear nobody saying, and maybe if you said this, Brandon, help me out, but I don't. I saw one or two super woke guys, and I'm saying that in a very pejorative way, who are so deep that they don't even believe in church, right? Because I'm talking about guys who love the Lord, which means they have some penchant for the Bible. Like you can't get around the fact that the Bible wants there to be a church. Like Jesus created the church. Like the church is not man's idea; it was His idea. And so, honestly, all of the drama and stuff that we see in church, He had to foresee that, given the fact that when He started church with the disciples, there was a bunch of messed up guys, and it was full of drama all the time. And it's like you read through the New Testament, you just don't ever seem to see folks figuring it out, even after Pentecost. So I see men that love the Lord is what I'm seeing, and I'm listening to Brandon. They have a reverence for Scripture. I don't hear any of these guys saying, I've quit on church. I hear these guys saying, I've quit on the current construct of church.
It's good.
Which is attending a building, listening to a pastor, and being a part of what I would say superficial fellowship. I mean, Brandon talked about, like, I'll just be real. I honestly think a lot of brothers are imperfect. Brandon's divorced, right? There's not a lot of spaces that men who have, some kind of quote unquote blight on them. I'm talking about from a religious perspective. Where do they go and feel valued and feel like they can bring their whole real selves to an experience? I talk to a lot of brothers, and it sounds like pain almost all the time. It's like, man, I don't want to. It's not even the sermon and stuff like that. No, we say sermons cater to women and stuff like that. Dude, to me, it's beyond that. But anyway, I'll shut up there. But I see that. Here's my short answer. Yeah. And this is the same thing that came out in my research, that we have made it convenient for men to leave. It's convenient. Yeah. Wow. It's not uncomfortable. They can leave and they feel no loss. Even if they're in the world, they go to the bar. They can go to the fraternity. They can go, you know what I'm saying, to hang out with the motorcycle club. You can't literally, sadly, you cannot look at the church and say they have something that the world does not have to offer that's superior. Yeah.
I want to let Lance jump in here, and then I have a point. Lance, I want you to react to what some of the stuff Brandon shared, because I think you were sharing online. I kind of heard some of your stuff. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you for sharing, brother. I mean, I've never met you, but I love your vulnerability and to share some of the things that you've gone through. I think that's what Myron and Kymone are putting together, that we can share and have that safe space. I'm a person that's deep in the church and loves the church and loves the fellowship. I haven't had some of the experiences that Brandon have had, because I'm just not as that I'm not at that level in my arc as a man. But I will say what I've observed in church is that there's a level of redundancy, there's a level of repetitiveness, and there are a lot of my friends that are not doing church right now, they comment and we comment. There's so much stuff going on that has nothing to do with my salvation. The doxology, the invocation, the stand up, the sit down, the announcements, the pomp and circumstance. I think people crave the word. And I think that, people want to be around other believers. They want to be encouraged, and they crave the word. And I think some of our churches, there's so much fluff and there's so many other things. One example before I shut up, I sat through Pelk and I sat through 5 consecutive sermons, at a convention in Huntsville, Alabama. MyRon was there. I didn't see you, Kymone, but I sat next to MyRon. I sat through many sermons and craved it and loved it on a Monday afternoon. But when they went into some pomp and circumstance and some announcements, I immediately left. So I think that how are we connecting with people that have needs, that are going through something? How are we, how are MyRons of the world, the leaders, are they putting together men's programs? And is there stuff in the service that actually reflects salvation, or is it more into the fluff and more into the traditionalism?
Good.
What you all are saying here is bringing up a really good question for me, like in my head. Like when we say church, what's the essence of what church is for all of us, right? Because when we were in the pandemic, what was the thing that we missed the most, right? We didn't miss the stand up, the sit downs, right? We missed the fellowship. And I think as you guys are saying this, right? Like Brandon, I'm hearing you, MyRon, some of the stuff you're saying, and Lance, it sounds like if I can get the fellowship somewhere else, I don't need the other stuff, right? I can almost save my weekends, save my Saturday, save my Sunday, and I find the fellowship here because I'm not finding it over there. Y'all talk to me like, what's the essence of what men really want from church, or want when they think about what the ideal of church is?
I want to hear from Brandon. Go ahead, Brandon, because I have a response to that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question too, like about the essence. And so in the men's ministry I was in, we would talk about this a lot, and we would talk about wanting to be that. Right. But and I think what men want is the fellowship, definitely amongst other men, but also, a way to deal kind of with their day to day. So, for example, if you're a father, you're looked at as you got to solve all those problems. But who do you go to? Especially if your father's not alive, or if your father's tired and weary, like your physical earthly father is tired and weary. And you may even be having to take care of him, especially if you're in my age range, in between that 40 to 50-year-old age range, because looking for someone to give you that real clear guidance. One last thing that I think about, this has kind of hit me too, and I wrestled with when I was about in between 35 to 40 or so. I would see younger and younger pastors, no knock against them, but they were senior pastors trying to give me advice about life I already lived. And I'm just looking.
You mean it from the pulpit, or just the pulpit, one-on-one,
or every once in a while in person? And like I had to check him. Like, I hear you, man, but you ain't even lived that part of the life. But I always appreciated older elders who were, part of the church, who would pull us in and say, "Hey, man, here's the path. I've been through divorce, or I've been through X, Y, and Z, and here's how you do it." Right. When that breaks down, then I think men are vulnerable to kind of sliding away. Now, I didn't think I'd ever be here, because I've worked for a church denomination, so I didn't think I'd ever be to that point where I'm not going back. But here I is.
What did he leave though?
Yeah,
go ahead.
What's that?
I'm saying when you think about it, let's really analyze this thing.
Yeah.
And Kymone, I know you spent a lot of time talking about this, because one of the refrains, James, that we kept hearing over and over again during the pandemic is what I would hear. We always come up with these refrains when we have to. When I was pastoring a small church, we would quote every week, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered," like he's in the midst. You know what I'm saying? And when we're in the pandemic, what the refrain was all the time, kind of went back to, "Oh, I am the church."
Yeah.
I am the church.
Oh,
people that would never stand up.
I heard that.
Yeah. I'm the church. We are the church. The church is not a building. Yeah. So what I'm seeing is that like the pandemic especially, I think, just revealed some stuff about church that we already knew was true. Yeah. Like that the church never was, that the modern version of church has never really lived up to being what church is supposed to be. So so this is what I'm saying. When I saw Jay's comment on my Instagram post, y'all can follow me at It's MyRon Live on Instagram as well as on Facebook. When I saw James's response and others, I was like, and I'm looking at all these responses from men who normally don't even respond like this because they're afraid that when women gonna get on there, they don't want to talk. But brothers are responding to this post, Brandon. And what I'm seeing is what brothers are rejecting is not even what Christ started.
That's the point.
Like they're rejecting a caricature of church. They're not rejecting what church is supposed to be and the things that people are craving for.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother subject. I could talk about learning styles and men are different. This is all stuff I learned in my research. I do believe that, well, I'll just end it right there because I want to get into, how white supremacy and colonialism has shaped church, and that may not be best suited, especially for men of color who are used to a more communal, contributing collaboration kind of experience. I know this. So I know every church has like a morning Bible study. I know in mine, we call it Sabbath school, and others we call it Sunday school. Have you noticed that men love that? Did you notice that?
I was
they don't like the time for it.
No, they don't like the time, but
I was a superintendent. I loved it. I get up, I go surfing in the morning at 6 o'clock to 8:30, get to church at 9:30, have my guitar, have my Bible, ready to lead out song service. Like, I loved it. Yeah. And when the early study time changed, right, from 9 o'clock, kept pushing it back to 10, kept pushing it back to, we might not even have it. I'm like, well, what am I coming for?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You know what's interesting? I think
that's crazy.
We said we're going to do a part 2 and a part 3. One of these parts, we have to talk about what would church for men look like, right? What would church for men look like? And we don't mean like church exclusively for men that women can't come. But if the church is going to be serious about engaging men, what does that look like? Because here is what is the saddest thing for me coming out of the pandemic. I thought that after the pandemic, things were going to change with the way the churches operated, because they had to scale everything down. And I thought we would have learned how to go back to what the essence of church was. Right. We just learned how to do everything we were doing online.
Yes.
And then the worst thing is, even that, right? We took away some of the stuff James mentioned, like the fluff. Now we put all the fluff back because we're in the building. And it's like, we have not learned. The only things we learn how to do is do it online and get people to give online. But we still are missing the essence of church. And it's like, at what point do we say, this ain't working? Is it when, because we're already empty, is it when we're not paying our bills? Like, is that what's going to be the wake-up call? Because people are already telling us by their absence that this isn't working.
My brief commentary, as Brandon mentioned, I've seen some of the comments. When I was growing up, I went to a phenomenal church that I loved being at. It had wonderful people, and we had so many fantastic male leaders of all ages. You were getting knowledge as a teenager from 50 and 60-year-olds, just like you said, Brandon, people who would live life and say, hey, young blood, you want to look out for these things. This is how you want to approach dating. We had fantastic basketball programs. We had sports programs. Some of my mentors at church took me to a golf course for the first time, and I was dressed wrong and looked goofy, but they always supported us. I think moving back to that, because it's very difficult to do the level of fellowship for people that are in pain. That's why you and MyRon have conferences. You have the sessions, but how do we get back to having that fellowship in person?
That's a good question. And you bring up something here, Lance J. The question that's on the screen says, what is the essence of church? And maybe I'll ask us this. What is the thing you remember, the memories that you cherish the most? You just mentioned, like, someone took me somewhere. We did this activity together, right? Now, I know we might have some memories of a great message we heard or some great music, but the thing we cherish are the relationships, right? Like, we don't think back, man, of course, preachers, we love this stuff, right? So some of us, that's what we have as our memories. But Brandon, like, what are the things when you look back on, this is what I really fell in love with church? What are some of the things that you would even bring up and say, this is what I loved?
Yeah, we're gonna probably have to bring Brandon back. He's got to leave in like a couple of 30 seconds. I know he's got somewhere to go. But go ahead.
Yeah, I'll give you. I can give you 5 more minutes here.
Okay.
This is an important topic. So for me, Sabbath school was it, man, and accomplishing something, right? So I remember being 8 years old, having on a good suit that my mom and my dad made sure I had on, and I'd memorized my Bible verse, being able to stand up and show that accomplishment, but also be able to tell people how it happened in my life, right, and how it worked. I loved Sabbath school because I was able to discover for myself who God is through reading his word, right? And also talking with people about it. My friends, people who I looked up to, and that continues. So that's one, but I find there's a lot of people who may not be as engaged, but I do like that that song, Take Me Back to the Place Where I First Received You. And I think some of those things need to happen as well. But it also, for me, the challenge was I'd run into barriers doing it. So, and I would feel, and somebody's written up here, men are the most undervalued and maligned group. I would feel undervalued trying to offer something to the church and like, oh yeah. And then I'd end up paying for it. So yeah.
Yo, so here this is my theory. All right. Because I'm looking at this post where I say, fellas, are you into church? Attend, involved? Why or why not? A good friend of mine, Kenneth Watts, also said, I enjoyed Bible study, Sabbath school for the opportunity of participation fellowship that has become my practice to go home after. Well, all right, honestly, here's the real deal. So like we're referring to programs, right? Sabbath school is a program, right? And I don't think people really want Sabbath school. It's not Sabbath school. It's a program, right? I think what people are looking for is they're looking for engagement. They're looking for participation. Yep. They're looking for affirmation. One of the things I discovered, especially with men in particular, and I have said this before, and I want if there are ladies listening, please hear me out when I say this. Like, I don't think black men have privilege. And that I'm speaking for me. I'm not speaking for nobody else on this podcast. Black men don't have privilege in America. It's a lie. The only place that black men have any kind of privilege is in the black church. And I think that is as a result of the fact that black men don't have privilege anywhere else. So I'm saying, so we come to church and brothers are fiending for affirmation. They're looking to be in leadership. So, I mean, I looked at our good friend Gamal's post. Gamal was like, there's so much of a cry about patriarchy in the church, right? But the majority of the church is women. I mean, patriarchy is not working for men. It's not working for men. I mean, if there's so much patriarchy in the church, right? Then how come men are not benefiting from it? And you can look at other religions where patriarchy, Islam, Judaism. I live in a neighborhood that's 80% Jewish. Listen, on Saturday morning, all you see is men walking to the synagogue, and from childhood. And I want to go back, and I'm connecting this to something that James said. As most of the time when you talk to people about their faith experience in church, they almost always go back in memory to when they were young. and what are they saying? No matter who their pastor was, it wasn't their pastor. He was a great preacher. It's always stuff that you can find outside of a church. I bonded with people. We played basketball. I connected. There were men in our community that were wise men, and they took me places. What are we describing here? We're describing we're not even describing what church. We're not describing what we are marketing as church is, correct, which is a worship service. We are exclusively marketing, I'm talking about for men, a place where men can belong.
Yeah.
Where men can belong.
Right.
And I'm saying, like, for me, I don't feel like the church is a place where men can belong, because most men, in my opinion, are looking for a non-judgmental, totally place of acceptance, toleration, and experience where they can be their full selves and not have to be who they are at work, which is a caricature of themselves in a white man's world, where they don't have to pretend and be who they are when they're in the grocery store, and they have to code switch and talk a certain way. And so then when I come to church, I got to code switch again and pretend. The reason why that's different for a young man is because a young man is not, that's why people always go back to their youth. A young man is not mature enough to be able to be in that space. But Brandon is a divorcee. I'm an ex-porn addict. Kymone, you have had issues with your relationships with your father. James has experienced grief on multiple levels within the past year. Life is different for us now. I don't have time for basketball anymore. I don't have time for sports anymore. I'm not coming here anymore to be a part of the golf and the glee team and be in the church choir. I want to sit around, and that's the mindset of men. Men are like, I ain't here to waste no time. I'm coming here because I got issues, and I want to be around some folks that are real, that's going to take care of me throughout this journey of life. And so I'm saying is most churches don't have that element. We're not that real. We're not that accepting. We're not that gracious to be able to handle men. We do okay with kids, but we're horrible with men because our churches are not real. That's my opinion.
And, you know, I mean, all of that co-sign. And the thing I'd say just to add is what people are leaving is not the church, it's the fake. And they leave it looking for church, and they find it in other spaces. And I think this is probably a good transition for us to talk about next week, talking about, and those of you on here, we'll be back next week talking about this. If you're listening, make sure you check in on part 2. Let's talk about like what does church for men, like real men who live life, right? Who live life, who've experienced some knocks, who don't have the rose-colored glasses, right, of childhood, who really live life. What does that church look like for them in this space? Brandon, appreciate you. MyRon, I know we're talking about church, and we don't just want to make a quick segue to this, but I do think this is important because it's a place for men to hear and to be spoken to specifically. Talk about what's happening next week, and then we'll continue part 2 of this.
Yeah, fellas, straight up, man. This is not what you think it is. I'm really trying to tap into some of the stuff I said. So this is going to be church for men, if you will, because I really want to create a space and an environment where you can really know what it means to be a man of God, and not the stereotypes, not the tropes, not the, the unrealistic expectations that you might have heard from your culture, your tradition. We're going to set the record straight. Join us this Monday, 7 a.m. and all the way till Thursday for how to be a man of God. What I should have put in there is a real man of God in 2022. All right, so we back next week. Make sure you share this podcast. Let's keep the dialogue going. I know somebody might have jumped on late, kind of heard something. You're like, this is incomplete. Yeah, it is incomplete because we're going to have a part 2 next week. So make sure you're here for part 2. If you know a brother who needs to be in on the conversation, make sure he knows about this. And yeah, let's keep the conversation.
Great topic, guys. Yeah. Fantastic topic.
Awesome.
Good stuff. Hey, I'm ready to I'm ready for this thing so bad, man, that I'm ready to end this one so we can get into the next one. Let's go. All right, let's be out.
For listening to this episode of Get Your Shift Together Men's Podcast. For more information, please visit our website, menswinningscircle.com. That is, menswinningscircle.com. Let's win in the things that matter.